Life happens. It's been 5 months since I've touched Yugioh Duel Links, and chances are you've been in a similar situation to me. In this video, we're going to cover exactly how to reapproach your account to optimize your comeback. If you're a new player, this video will also be a great source of information, so make sure to stick to the end. This video was recommended by one of my subscribers. If you would like to get a shout out, then comment down below the types of videos you would like to see. Now let's get into it. Duel Link's skill system is both a gift and a curse. On one hand, decks that have never been good before now have a chance to compete on the same field as previous meta decks throughout Yu-Gi-Oh! We can finally see cool anime decks like Neil's Kluger Yubel actually be competitive, when in the TCG they haven't ever seen play because they were just pack filler for anime fans. But the downside to this is that a lot of these decks are only good because of their skill, and if the skill gets nerfed, then you're In other words, these decks are cool but volatile. Duel Links is not a free-to-play friendly game, and I think it's important to invest your gems thoughtfully and prioritize your deck's future over time. So, power creep is normal in Yu-Gi-Oh! Your decks will get worse over time, and that's just a fact. And if you've been gone for a while, then you might be off-put by how different things seem now. But at this point, the game has been power crept to the point that we actually have some archetypes that see play in the modern TCG as well. This means that we can start to reference the TCG now more than ever. And although my advice might seem boring, in my opinion, I would recommend putting your resources towards a historically good deck in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG that even without skills has a cohesive strategy to it. Yes, it will probably have a skill in Duel Links, but even if it gets nerfed, once new support is out, the core you invested in will pay dividends later. I'd also like to note that just because a deck is good in the TCG, that doesn't necessarily mean it will be good in Duel Links. But odds are strong engines there will also be strong here as well, so it's worth looking at them when trying to evaluate what deck to build. On top of that, I would choose a deck whose core is in a mini box. Konami will also occasionally be nice and drop a pickup box or a deck building box. These are relatively new and even better investments than mini boxes, but they're usually limited time only, so if you see an archetype you want or a key staple, make sure to pick them up. And finally, I recommend building a cheap and sustainable deck first, not necessarily the strongest deck in the meta. The purpose of your first deck coming back into the game is to give you stability and kickstart your account regardless of the meta. And ideally, we want it to continue to be relevant and benefit from upcoming power creep and help snowball your progress over time. Alright, so I'll change my advice depending on how many completed decks you have in your account from the last 3 years. So, if you already have a few decent decks, go on to Duel Links meta and look for archetypes that have seen relative success in the current meta. That means either on the tier list or seeing consistent King of Games or maxing KC Cups, and that you already have the majority of core cards for. So an example of this is that recently I was talking with someone and I told them to make Sharks. This is because they got the main Shark core back in 2021 when it was seeing some niche play, and as of this video, Sharks are on the tier list at tier 3. Now, they only need to open up the mini box with Black Ray Lancer one time and pick up the Drill Driver Vespinato special set, and they already have a meta deck list. If you can do something similar in your account, that is my recommendation. Here are some quick pointers to help fine-tune your decision. Try to avoid opening more than one specific box. This will help keep your resource spending low and will help you start saving gems for other decks in the future. Look to see if you can play a slightly budget version of the deck. Maybe you can cut out a core UR card run at 3, which can oftentimes save you a ton of gems. And finally, don't worry about getting the shiny new staples. Your old ones will probably do the trick just fine. If you're interested in some of the best and timeless staples in Duel Links, check out my video in the top right. I also go over a bunch of good free-to-play options there as well. Now, if you didn't invest in a deck core previously, or you're just newer to the game, don't worry. Here are 2 decks that I think are S-tier investments. So the first deck is Rockets. Dragon Link has been one of the best decks with the most busted support in the TCG. In Duel Links, the Rocket core has been competitive for a long time. In fact, we're actually seeing the first signs of it transitioning from pure Rockets to a Dragon Link variant, and it's currently the top meta and ranked number 1 in the latest KC Cup. Since its release, the Rocket engine has always been playable on ladder. Over time, we've had a couple different skills and versions of the deck, And we've already seen some more support printed that's not just in the Lord of Boral mini box. But honestly, I expect the current iteration to get a nerf in the near future. But don't worry, they are still a great investment if you're getting back into Duel Links. And once the base rocket deck is done, you can always upgrade it again later with the current support. This is one of those archetypes that is evergreen and will continue to be good and get support for the rest of the game. We don't even have half the Dragon Link support yet. Like, we don't even have Striker Dragon, which when it comes out will probably make the deck top meta again. And you can get started acquiring this core in a single mini box. The base rocket deck is totally playable right now, super free to play, and is actually the deck I'm dumping my gems in for my Duel Links comeback. Here's an example of a free to play deck list that only requires the mini box and box chips. Stay tuned for some rocket content in the near future. Alright, now the next deck I would recommend is Salaman Great. And although it isn't on the tier list and it's in a main box, the deck is actually really cheap. And it's seen success on ladder, world champion qualifiers, and the latest KC Cup. You only need to open up Link Revolution once to get the core, because the rest of the main deck cards are either level up rewards, drops, or staples. On the topic of staples, Link Revolution has Warning Point, which if you don't have is definitely a plus. Also, you'll have to open up another main box for the extra deck, but the bright side to this is that Future Circuit is literally the best box to open for long-term progression in Duel Links. Like, it has all the relevant Nightmare extra deck cards, and it has Dark Hole, a fantastic staple that will never stop seeing play. So while it will take a bit more time to open up 2 main boxes, the payoff is that you will have a bunch of reusable staples for your next deck, and your archetype core came along with it. But Salaman Great still has support to come and currently sees competitive play in the TCG, so it gets a recommendation from me. And if you're not interested in either of those decks, and you don't already have solid gem investments, I'd suggest going to the gem guide on Duel Links Meta, and that will get you the next best way to spend your gems. A note though, right now the gem guide is recommending Lyralisk, but the character you need to play that deck isn't actually available right now. Make sure you have the character before you invest your gems. But in any case, I genuinely think I gave you some bangers that will continue to be good investments at whatever point you see this video. Alright, so now you know what decks to invest in. I've personally wasted a lot of money in gems opening random packs without clarity, so I really hope this video will save you resources and has helped you figure out how to reapproach your account. Check out some of my other videos in the top right, and I will catch you in the next one.